I'd like to welcome everyone. My name is Hayden Harrington, one of the managing partners here at Momentum Multifamily. We're super excited to bring you a featured presentation tonight by Matt Pitchney. But first, I'd like to turn it over to Dustin, who's going to introduce himself and kind of give you an outline of how tonight's going to unfold.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody being here. I'm trying to think of, I don't know how long, Matt, we've known each other, but it's been a while, 5+ years for sure, maybe 7+. But anyways, yeah, super excited to have you here, and just kind of his story about from 0 to 1 and how he made that transition from theater to owning lots and lots of apartments. I don't know if you know this, I'm an investor in one of your deals. So anyways, he'll give presentation and do a Q&A, and then feel free to kind of drop some questions in the chat box as we go. And yeah, super excited to have him. He just moved from Boston to New York. So Matt, I'll turn it over to you, man.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. Thanks. It's a pleasure to meet you all tonight. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and we can get going. So yeah, I just put this presentation together. It's called Scaling from Zero. It's just my story of, how I got started and how I've scaled my portfolio over time. I'll just start with a little disclaimer here that I'm just telling you some things that I believe to be true, but you should check with your lawyer or your accountant, your CPA about all these things, because I am not an attorney. I am not a CPA. So I'm just caveat everything with just saying that. And we'll start with the early days. I was born in 1973. And here's a picture of me. It is actually really apropos that we're doing this tonight, because my daughter just went to her first day of pre-K today. And this is a picture of me at the morning of my first day of preschool. My mom took this photo. So that's me at an apartment community we lived in called Oakwood Village back in 1975. Fast forward many years, this is me in 1990, dressed as Mowgli from the Jungle Book at Walt Disney World. So I caught the acting bug early in life and was really interested in performing and acting. And while my friends were flipping burgers at McDonald's when we were in high school, I was dancing in the Magic Kingdom and singing and dressing up like a fool, as you can see. So that was me in 1990, I think I was a senior in high school at this point. And in 1992, so I was a junior. In 1992, I moved to New York. So this is a photo of New York circa 1992, courtesy of Google Images. But I moved to the Big Apple, and I moved there to pursue a career in theater and become I didn't necessarily want to be famous, but I wanted to be, I wanted to have a good career in the theater business. And, this is a photo of me. I went to a musical theater conservatory. And so when I graduated in 94, I got professional headshots, and that's me. As you can see, I look like I'm like 12 years old in the photo. I look pretty young for my age anyhow, but back then I could pass as a very, very little kid. It took me, I still get carded sometimes when I go to bars. So, but from 1994 to 2000, I was in 15 professional productions all across the United States. I did a lot of tours. I did some off-Broadway, mainly a lot of regional theater, then did some international tours as well. So this isn't even all of them, but these are a few of the ones that I was in. I had a great run doing that. I really enjoyed it. But I also was starting to find another passion. So in 1997, I started really getting into the internet. AOL had come out. I actually think it was probably 96 when I first got a laptop computer and started going online and started to learn about the internet. And this guy who was actually in one of my shows, he was a cast member of mine. He actually it was actually Jekyll and Hyde, and the guy's name's David. He sent me like an instant message on AOL Instant Messenger, and it was like a link, and I clicked on it, and it was like his headshot and his resume. It was like on the computer screen, and I was like, wow, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen, because I'm a big nerdy geeky guy, and I just thought it was really cool. And so I found out how he did it, which was through there was a thing called AOL Press way back in the day. And I started making one of my own. And there was a button on the AOL Press that you could hit. It said HTML. I didn't know what it stood for, but I clicked on it. And the screen went from this visual thing to like all this like weird, it was English kind of, but these weird symbols and stuff. And I started noticing that as I made changes to the visual editor, it actually made the changes on the screen, right? In the text editor, right? Back and forth. And sort of without knowing it, I basically taught myself HTML over the course of, a few months. And I started getting really into it, really enjoyed it, and started getting opportunities. I don't want to get too deep into this part of the story for this conversation. But I've actually written a book I'll talk about at the end, and it kind of goes a little deeper into this. But I basically taught myself how to code. I started my own company, and I was doing website development for a bunch of agencies. And that's really when I started, working in the advertising and digital marketing world. So that's Piceni Productions, which you can see the logo on the left. That was my own company. It was a boutique agency that I ran for a number of years. But was really going sort of full time and not really doing the theatrical stuff anymore, but by around 1998. So I spent 18 years in the digital marketing world. I mean, I had my own company for almost 5 years. And then I was at Showtime for a bunch of years, and then, a bunch of these other advertising agencies in New York, doing digital marketing efforts. And what my role there was, I was a project manager. So I was in charge of managing people, budgets, and timelines. And over time, I got very good at it. Got certified. I'm a PMI certified project management professional, and sort of climbed my way up the corporate ladder. Where I used to manage projects, I started managing people who were managing projects, and became a department head. And so anyway, that was a wonderful 18 years. During that time, I started tinkering around a bit with real estate. And so the first real estate purchase that I had was in 2001. And I bought this property here. Well, not the whole property. It's kind of funny because I look at it and I'm like, nowadays, with multifamily, people are buying these entire properties. Now, I bought this. So this little unit over here, a 1-bedroom unit in Washington Heights, which, if you don't know New York City, it's in Manhattan, but it's all the way north, like almost as far north as you could possibly get without falling into the water. And what happened, it's not where I wanted to live. I actually wanted to live on the Upper West Side, but this is what I could afford. I bought this property. The unit itself was not in great shape, and the building was not in great shape. We did a lot of work on the building to enhance the lobby and the hallways. And this was a co-op. So most apartments in New York City are co-ops. And so for those of you who are not familiar with a co-op, it's a cooperative living situations where you actually buy shares of the corporation that owns the building, and you're given a proprietary lease. And that lease allows you a lease for your particular unit, but you're not actually buying the unit. And there are common charges that you will pay to take care of things like the property taxes and the upkeep on the building. It's run by a co-op board. And I became friendly with a few people on the co-op board at the property. And we had been talking about how the lobby and the hallways really needed work. And they asked me to be on a committee, and we did that. We actually hired a designer to help us and help us with the sourcing of the materials And we renovated the lobbies and the hallways, and I renovated my unit. And I was able to sell my unit about a little over 2 years after I had bought it. The property had more than doubled in value. And so I saw my equity in the property more than quadruple, which was amazing to me. So that was like a huge light bulb that went off in my head, that, wow, there's really something to this real estate thing. I was able to take the money, the profit that I had from this transaction, and buy a new place on the Upper West Side. Again, not the entire building, but this unit over here, apartment 1D, which I love dearly. I really wish I would have been able to keep it. It's a great apartment, great location. But again, co-op board, it doesn't really allow for rentals. And it didn't work out that way. So, but it was a great apartment. I loved it. I lived there for almost 10 years. But while I was there, because of that light bulb moment I had made from that first apartment that I sold and made all that money, I knew that I wanted to start doing some real estate investment. And so the first real estate investment that I made was in an area called Woodridge Lake. It's a community in Goshen, Connecticut. So that's Northwest Connecticut. It's about 2 hours from New York City. It was 2 hours door to door from my apartment. When I bought it, I thought it might be an investment. I bought this land. I bought almost an acre of land, and this is what it looked like. It was just covered with trees. But everybody who lives in that community has access to, again, that beautiful lake and that marina where you can see there's boats. And if you look closely, you can see there's tennis courts. There's actually 2 sets of tennis courts, and there's a pool. And as a owner of property there, I would have access to all of that. And one of my really good friends' parents lived up there. So we could go up there, hang out at her parents' house, but go over here. I ended up getting a boat. I had a boat on the marina. We could play tennis, which I'm terrible at tennis, but we could swim in the pool. It was just a good time and fun. And, 2 hours, it could be a day trip from New York. Usually we'd spend a weekend up there, but you could go up in the morning. Sometimes we'd go up in the morning, just go out on the boat, hang out, come back in the evening. I mean, it was awesome. Really loved it. And every time we would go, I would drive by my piece of land that just had a bunch of trees on it. And then one day I decided to go ahead and chop down those trees and build the property. So we got them marked, and we cut down a bunch of trees, and we dug, and they poured a foundation. And this is me walking around. Those are the forms for the cement for the foundation. It was half poured at this point. This is me pretending to know what I'm doing, walking around looking at it. But that property was eventually built. It came out really nice. I had designed it myself with the help of an architect. It was quite a saga. There's a whole chapter in my book about it, but it was a great experience to really learn how real estate is built, like literally from the ground up. And what happened with this property was, I was hopeful that maybe in the first few years of ownership, I would be able to rent it out maybe a little bit here and there during the summertime to help defray my costs. Because, now I had a place in New York and I had a country house. What happened was there was a lot more demand for the property than I had expected. Also, I met somebody who ended up becoming my wife right around the time that the property was finished. And her parents have a place in Connecticut, but on the other side of the state, and they're frequently not there. So there was opportunity to still have a getaway, but rent this property out more regularly. And now I did it as a vacation rental. I also found out that, which was unbeknownst to me at the beginning, I knew that there was a little mountain nearby that they sometimes had skiing. What I didn't realize was there was going to be demand for people who wanted to rent the house during the winter. So what ended up happening with this property was I ended up renting it out pretty much the entire year. I mean, it was available the entire year. Once in a while, I'd have a weekend here or there that it wasn't rented, and I go up and do some repairs on the property and kind of hang out and go out on my boat. But it was really like, less than 2 weeks out of the entire year. And so without kind of really knowing what I was doing or planning to do it, here I was with a rental property. And I was managing the property myself, and I was managing it remotely because I lived 2 hours away. So I built a team, and I got to tell you, the biggest takeaway lesson for me from this was that I didn't want to manage my own properties, especially ones that were really far away. It was difficult. And I never underwrote this property such that it would produce positive cash flow, but it was doing all right. It was pretty much breaking even every year. I'm paying down the debt on the property. I mean, it did all right for somebody who really went into it with a totally different point of view, right? I wasn't going into this to have a cash flowing property. But this really taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about accounting too, and depreciation, and all kinds of things that I really had no exposure to. When I first bought the property, I was keeping track of everything in Excel, and then I upgraded and started using QuickBooks because I needed to keep track of all my expenses, the income, looking at rental agreements, all that kind of stuff. It turned out to be a tremendous learning experience for me. And so this really became like a side hustle for me. It was like, this little thing that I was doing on the side and making a little bit of money doing it. And it was a lot of fun. And I didn't even know, that there was this term side hustle, but I learned about it after I already had the property. And then there was another term I learned later called house hack. I did a house hack without even knowing there was a thing called a house hack. And that was this property here. So after living on the Upper West Side for almost 10 years, I got married. My wife and I were expecting our first child, and our little 1-bedroom wasn't going to cut it anymore. So we decided to move out to Brooklyn, and we bought this property, and it's a 2-family home. There's you can see the stairs to go to the upstairs unit. And if you go down the stairs here, there's a secondary unit. And we lived in the bottom unit. So we were able to move in. The bottom unit was 2 bedrooms and a very, very, very small office, which we used as a nursery, but it was technically not a 3rd bedroom, but nice size, good living room. And the greatest thing was there was already tenants upstairs, and the rent that the tenants were paying was going to make our mortgage payment on the house as a whole less than what it would have been if we rented an equal piece, equal apartment elsewhere in Brooklyn. There was just one big catch, which is you can kind of see over here, this wooden fence. Right next to us was this boarded up KFC that had like this massive parking lot. It was disgusting, and it just breeded like bugs and mosquitoes, and it was terrible. And it was a big eyesore, and it's why a lot of people maybe weren't interested in this property. But we looked at where it was 4 blocks south of the Barclays Center and about 6 blocks north of the first Whole Foods, at the time, the only Whole Foods in Brooklyn. And we said, look, we're right on the path of progress. Eventually, someone's going to build this property and do something with it. Turns out we were right. Someone bought the entire block and is just about complete with a massive condo, gorgeous, super high-end luxury. I mean, the studio apartments in that building are going for like $900,000 for a studio for like 400 square feet. So, I mean, it's a really, really, really nice property. Now, we had to wait a long time for that to happen, but it did happen, and it was great. So anyway, backing up, we lived in this apartment, and my wife got approached completely out of the blue with a really cool job opportunity. Now, my wife works in the theater. She's on the business side of theater, and she was approached for this opportunity that was in Miami, and it was a amazing opportunity for Erica because she had been doing Broadway her whole career, and this was a chance to do some Broadway stuff in Miami, but also do rock music, do classical music, do ballet, do comedians, it was just, it was an amazing opportunity for her to run the programming at they have, I think 3 different performance spaces in this big performing arts center in Miami. Actually 4, they have 4 performance spaces. So it was just too good to pass up. So we moved down there. And when we moved down there, I finally listened, because I didn't read it. I did the audio book of this purple book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I see some people smiling who are on this. I mean, I think most people who are in real estate at some point have come across this book. And it floored me. And I was like, wow, this is what it's really about. The big takeaway for me was create multiple streams of passive income. So I'm like, okay, I got to do that. And I looked at what I had. And again, we had just moved to Miami, and I had some passive income. I had the property in Brooklyn, because if you remember, I said the rent that we were paying down below, our mortgage, our portion of the mortgage was less than what we would. So we rented it out at the regular market rate. So we had some nice cash flow coming in from that. I also figured, hopefully, eventually I could figure out how to make the property in Connecticut turn a little bit of a profit. But we also had invested in some Broadway musicals because of my passion and desire and love for that, and my wife's daily work in there. And we were fortunate enough to have the opportunity to invest a teeny little bit in a show that was running. It ran off Broadway. I thought it was one of the best shows I'd ever seen, but it was like really weird. It was like American history. It was about this guy who was one of the founding fathers, who never even was a president. But that show was called Hamilton. And as you know, it's become a massive hit. We didn't know that it would be as big of a hit as it became. We thought it was going to do well. I really loved it. We were supportive of it, and happened to be a really nice financial success. So I had some income coming in passively from Hamilton, some income from the rental property in Brooklyn. And I said, you know what? This is what I want to do full time. I think I know what I'm doing. I think I can do this. And that's when I started doing real estate full time. And I started off in January of 2016 by going to a tax lien course. And I was going to learn how to buy tax lien properties with these 7 video trainings, but I did it live. I was in a hotel. There was like a free. So here's how it happened. Kiyosaki says in the book something about, if a seminar comes to your town, you should go to it. You'll learn. And even if it's a scam, you'll meet like-minded people. So, okay, I'm driving in the car like the day after I listened to that chapter where Kiyosaki says that. And there, it's like, hey, come to the tax lien thing. So I pull over on the side of the road and I write down the number. It's a radio, and I call and I get, a free ticket to go to this thing. So, as I'm sure you probably know, because you guys may have been to one of these or heard about these kinds of things, you go to the hotel, the free seminar is like a pitch for the real seminar, which is next weekend. And there's only like 3 spots left. So if you run to the back of the room right now, you can still, for $300, get into the course. So I ran in the back of the room. And by the way, I worked in advertising for 18 years. So I know an urgency play when I see one, but I was like, you know what? I'm starting a business. What do I have to lose? Kiyosaki says, go to him. I'll meet some other people. So I paid $300, went to the weekend. And I'll tell you, honestly, these guys taught their whole system in a weekend. I have the binder up there to prove it. I've got the videos. I mean, everything, but it was like impossible to find anything. And to make one of these things work. Now, if you could find one, you would make it work, but it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. So that didn't really work out so well. But in the same time, I decided to also. So what my plan was, I'm going to try to get these tax lien properties and either buy the tax lien or actually get the property, fix them up, flip them, and then use that money to buy single family homes. Maybe I would keep the properties I was flipping as single family homes, or maybe I would just flip them to generate capital to buy single family homes. And those single family homes are going to give me the passive income. That's what I thought. So this was my first property that I bought. and here's what it looked like afterwards, new siding, new shutters, new roof, the interior is completely redone. Here's what the kitchen looked like when we bought it. Here's what it looked like when we were done, right? The white cabinets, the granite countertops, stainless appliances. Here was the second one I bought, same kind of deal. This is what it looked like after. Here's the before. We broke open this wall. There was mold in there. I mean, this one didn't do so well financially, but it looked beautiful when we were done. But managing these flips, so I was managing them in Ohio, because to flip something in Miami is like millions of dollars for anything that makes sense. I just said, it was a lot of work trying to manage this remotely on such a small scale. The profits were so small. Trying to find the deals was, again, like a needle in a haystack. It just wasn't working for me. And that's, and during that time, I also bought a couple of turnkey. So with the profits that I was making, turnkey rentals in Memphis, I got a couple of them. I still own them to this day. They do well. They flow off some nice cash flow, but it just wasn't going to be scalable. I wasn't going to be able to take this to the level where I was getting close to even what I had been making before full-time in real estate. And that's when I learned about syndication. I heard people talking about it on some different podcasts, and I ended up going to this webinar, this in-person seminar in Dallas called The Secrets to Successful Syndication by these guys. I don't know if you know them, but they're the real estate radio guys, right? Robert Helms and Russell Gray. They're awesome, by the way. And so I went to their seminar, and I learned about syndication and what it was and how you can do it legally. And their seminar is really not a nuts and bolts on exactly how to do it. It's a more of a 30,000 foot level on it. They had different people there speaking about different types of real estate syndications. There was people doing assisted living syndications. There was someone there who was going to be doing a syndication. They wanted to syndicate she was a geothermal engineer, and it was something along those lines. I don't know. It was very interesting stuff, but you can syndicate anything. And the thing that I learned most interestingly from this was I had been involved in syndications before. You see, all the Broadway stuff, it's actually syndications. They're 506c syndications. They're Reg D 506c syndications. I didn't know that. Sure, in the paperwork, there was one reference to 506c, and I didn't know what that meant. I knew I had to be an accredited investor and all those other things, and I read the paperwork, but I didn't realize it's actually a syndication. I mean, there it was, the PPM, the subscription agreement, all the different documents. So it was kind of really enlightening. And I learned, basically through that, that real estate, the effort and control is very different, right? So when you're doing the fix and flips, you have a lot of control, but you also have a lot of effort. When you move more into multifamily, obviously, not just multifamily, but syndications, right? Whether it's multifamily, commercial, mobile home parks, whatever it is, it's a lot less effort as a passive investor, but it's a lot less control. And I learned about sponsors and general partnership, and that you have to set up a legal entity, and the whole shebang, which I think most of you know. So I'm gonna just gloss over these things for you. But I want to tell you about the first syndicated investment that I invested in. It was 77 units in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And this was a big deal for me. I mean, I put down, I think it was $50,000 out of my IRA, which I had moved into a self-directed IRA at the time. And this was being run by 3 people I had met in those seminars and got to know and liked very, very much. I thought they were very smart. They seemed to know what they were doing. Invested in this property. Ultimately, went full cycle. And I walked away with a 3% return. So I was really actually thrilled and thanking my lucky stars that we had a 3% return, because this thing was crashing and burning like you would not believe. There were some really bad miscalculations that were made on this property. And I really credit one of the sponsors for saving this deal. And this is when it came really evident to me that the deals are important. The fundamentals of a deal are important, but the most important thing is who that syndicator is, who that sponsor is, because this deal really should have lost a ton of money, and it didn't. We got out. The guy who one of the co-sponsors on this, he's actually an airplane pilot, and he landed that plane. It was a rough landing, but he landed it, and I'm grateful to him for that. But it really brought home to me a lot of different things that I needed to learn about as I was investing. And I wanted to sponsor deals of my own, but I also wanted to be a limited partner in these deals and learn from other sponsors and learn what they were doing. And so I was looking for a deal to do. I was in a mentorship group at this point, which is how I ended up meeting Dustin. And I was looking for deals to sponsor, but also investing passively. And so over the course of a couple of years, I invested passively in a little over 1,000 units. And the most interesting one of all of these is this Circle at 1800 in Waco, Texas, because this deal I'm a key principal in it. So for those of you who may not know, agency debt, so getting debt with Fannie or Freddie, is very desirable for these types of properties. And it's pretty difficult to get approved for a loan, especially on like 168 multifamily units, if you've never done that before, and if no one on your team has ever done that before. One of the things you can do is you can be a key principal and loan your balance sheet to the team that is putting the deal together. And you can sign on that loan, which I did. You're basically a guarantor for the loan. Now, the loans are non-recourse, but if the people who are running the deal do something shady, there are these bad boy carve-outs where the deal then does become recourse. So you are signing as a guarantor on these, but you're getting the experience. And I knew that I wanted to do a deal as a sponsor myself. And I thought, hey, this would be a good opportunity. I wanted to invest in this deal anyhow. This would be a good opportunity for me to sign on the loan, learn how that whole thing works, look at all that paperwork, learn that aspect of it, and also get the cred. So I did. I don't know that I would do that again. This deal has not done well at all. It's in under contract to be sold, which I'm very grateful for. They had to do a capital, and as a key principal, I have no control over the deal. I just guarantee the loan, and then I'm a limited partner. So they had to do a capital call. I mean, this thing was a mess, and that was before COVID. But it looks like we're supposed to turn a profit. I don't know how much, but my shares have become diluted because I didn't contribute to the capital on the capital call. But this is something good to know about being a key principal and how that works, which is why I wanted to call that out. And then I ended up getting my first sponsorship after years and years of trying and trying in several markets. I had started up in the Akron market where I had been flipping properties. I was looking in Miami where I had lived, in Central Florida. But I had a really good friend who lived in Kansas City, and I had done a show out in Kansas City back in my acting days. And back in my acting days, in my 20s, my early 20s, I thought I was going to be sitting in Kansas, like in the cornfields, watching corn grow and be really bored. And that was just my naivete, my naivete, back then. And I was surprised at like how metropolitan it is. It's a really cool city. It was like a lot of fun. And so because I think I had downplayed it in my head so much and had such a wonderful summer there, I've always had a soft spot in my heart for Kansas City. My friend moved there, started looking at multifamily in the area. I don't recommend people do it now because things are super inflated there for some reason. But at the time, things actually made sense. The numbers made sense. And I bought 132 units in Lawrence, Kansas, which is between Kansas City and Topeka. And that deal went really well. I mean, we held it for a little over 2 years. And then we exited Our IRR was higher than we had projected. The investors were thrilled. That was a fun deal. And so I have gone on now to sponsor a number of properties. So that one's sold, so that's no longer in the portfolio, but these are mainly in Texas and Kansas City. But these are the properties that I have sponsored. All multifamily, all value add, mainly B and C class properties, leaning more towards the B type assets lately. And those have gone really well. And then I have these ones that I've exited. Sunrise Properties was a portfolio of 2 properties. We sold Stoneside Apartments, again, beating our projections. And we've got Broadway Ridge, which is this one right over here, 72 units in Kansas City. We've signed a contract with a broker, and that'll be hitting the market in the next few weeks. But in addition to that, my limited partnership portfolio has grown as well. About 2/3 of my portfolio overall are deals that I'm a limited partner in. So, I've got these 17, 1,750 units here, ranging from Pittsburgh, Texas, Oklahoma, Winter Park, Florida. Then I got another 23 that I got on this slide, including like a development deal that we're doing in Everett, Massachusetts, which is basically Boston, Texas, Arizona. And then I have over 938 deals that were limited partnership deals that I invested in that have since exited and paid nice returns, except for a home in Uptown. It still was profitable, barely, but still profitable. So that was good. But I want to tell you about Live at Winter Park, which is the one that you saw 2 slides ago. You'll remember this photo from the very beginning of the presentation, 1975. Me as a little boy standing outside of our apartment at Oakwood Village in 1975. Well, this is me 45 years later at Live at Winter Park, standing in front of the same door of that last picture. I became an owner of the apartment building that I used to live in when I was just a little kid. So this is kind of a really cool full circle sort of moment there for me. So that's basically my story, guys. I mean, I've written a book that goes into great detail on all of those things that I just talked about, and it'll be available in November. But I'd like to open this up for you guys to ask questions if you have some. I see there's some stuff in the chat, and find out, what my experience I can, what sort of value I can give you guys from my experience. So, Dustin, I don't know how you want to handle that.
Yeah. We can. Yeah. If there's any questions, go ahead and start putting them in to the chat. One thing I just will mention real quick, really like your the cover of your book. Looks really cool. So
thank you.
Yeah, good job on that. So but
it was nerve-wracking actually going through that. And I ended up doing a thing with 99 designs. I got tons of designers, and there was all these different directions and getting feedback from everyone. It was interesting, but yeah, thanks. I'm glad you like it. I'm pretty pleased with it.
Really cool. I mean, a lot of covers on a lot of books are kind of ho hum. That one's pretty cool. So.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Any questions for Matt?
I see that Gary Pierce in the chat knows who my turnkey provider was. That's true. They're actually really good. And Angel, I guess Crescent Village is around the corner from your house. That's really interesting. Here's one. Okay, so Leslie, I guess I'm glad I tugged at your heartstrings there for a moment. Josh is asking the difference between being a partner and sponsorship. That's an awesome question. So in these syndications, everybody is a partner, right? And when you're doing a real estate deal, you can have partners without even having a syndication. You could do a joint venture. There's different ways to own property. But when you're doing a syndication, typically things can be set up a little bit differently, but typically you have a limited partner, and you have a general partner, and usually there's multiple on both sides. And so the limited partners will be investing in the deal, and they'll get equity in the deal, but they won't be in charge of the day-to-day operations, where the general partner or partners will be the people who have found the deal, put the whole deal together, reach out to all the other partners and get all the investment dollars together, and then go ahead and run and operate that deal. And they're the ones who are more in charge of the day-to-day decision making. Now, I speak in generalities because there's not one clear-cut way to do all of this, right? It can be done differently. This is generally how it's done and generally the way things are set up. But you may encounter things where things are set up in a different manner. But that's generally what happens. A lot of, so in most cases, the general partners have pretty much complete autonomy on the deal and can decide when to exit a deal. The deal I was talking about, the 132 unit deal in Lawrence, we could have just decided to sell it and exit. I mean, it was profitable. It was better than the investors were expecting, but we were very early on our timeline. And there was also the possibility that maybe we could make more by holding on to it longer. And so we were really not sure. I mean, we were pretty sure we wanted to sell it, but we didn't know how the investors would feel. So we actually went ahead and took a vote. So we didn't have to, but we did. And so that's why I'm saying, like, sometimes things can be a little bit different. Unanimously, all the investors were like, sell it. So we sold it. But that's kind of that. I mean, Dustin, do you have anything else to add about that, or Hayden?
No, yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. We got some more questions coming in for you. Looks like the next one is from Miralai. What is the best way for a starter to get GP/sponsor roles? How to build the resume to GP?
Find a really good deal is the best way. Or I've seen people who have had a lot of money. And like, I know somebody who he had exited his Wall Street job and had like several millions of dollars in capital, and went to someone who was doing a deal. And that deal, they needed to raise like $2 million. And he said, listen, I want to come in. I'm going to invest $1 million in the deal, and I want to be one of the general partners. And they said, okay. So that is a way. But if you can find a really good deal, that's another way. Or then I think a third way is to network, right? And meet with people. My first deal as a sponsor, I got on my own through a lot of hard work. And it took me 2 years of putting in offers, getting rejected, looking in a few different markets, and then finally getting something. I went to a person who was in a mentorship program that I was in, who had been looking at deals with me and kind of coaching me along the way. I asked him if he would partner with me in the deal, and he did. I also brought him in on another deal. And then a couple of years later, he has a deal and he brings me in on his deal. So, we tend to, work with one another and bring each other on deal, not exclusively. Sometimes someone else will ask me to get involved in a deal and it might be right and he doesn't, but, building those relationships is super important. And I think being a part of a group like this mastermind that Dustin and Hayden have put together here, this meetup group, is a fantastic way to meet other investors, get to meet people, get to know them. And, if you could help a general partner out. This one guy that we deal with sometimes now, he met someone else. He invested in a deal and approached the general partner and was like, listen, I used to be an actuary. I'm really good with numbers. I want to help you in the asset management, review your numbers, review your general ledgers for you. And I'm going to do it all for free. And the guy was like, okay, fine. And then next thing you know, next deal comes around, they need someone, and this guy's really good with the books, and they said, you know what? Hey, Albert, you want to join us as a general partner? So I think by providing value to people is the best way to sort of get involved.
Yep. Awesome. So Ed and Laura asked, what are some questions you ask GPs before investing?
That's really, well, those are really good. That's a really good question. And I actually go into detail in my book. I found that the most important thing for me when I'm vetting a general partner is if I can get a recommendation from somebody else that I know, that I know that's an investor that I like, that I trust. That's really important, and that's kind of the sort of ultimate gold standard. There's a few other things that I look at when I'm looking at a general partner. I want to understand what their role is in the deal. Nowadays you got a lot of people who are general partner in a deal, but they're really just raising capital for the deal. That violates the SEC rules, okay, first off and foremost. But just getting beyond that, I don't want to invest in a deal where I'm investing through someone else who doesn't have control over the deal. A lot of times these people who are just raising capital for the deal, they are not a decision maker. They're not signing on the loan, and they're not a decision maker. And for me, I have a problem with that. I want to know that I'm speaking with someone who's going to be steering the ship. And that's really important for me as a sponsor. People come to me all the time like, hey, will you raise money for this deal? And I always say no. I'm only going to get involved in a deal if I am in the, asset management. I'm involved in the day-to-day, because my investors expect that of me. The other thing that I want to know from general partners, what's their track record? And if they don't have a track record in real estate, which is really where I want the track record to be, I may still be okay with it. Look, everyone has to start somewhere. I started my first deal. I hadn't done any multifamily. I had done some other real estate. I had done some fix and flips that were successful, some rental properties and things like that. So I was showing that. I also had a partner that I had brought in on the deal who had done 10 multifamily deals, but it was my first deal. And, but I had a good track record and a good business track record. I was a PMI, I still am a PMI certified project management professional. And I managed timelines and people and budgets for Fortune 100 companies, Coca-Cola, Verizon, Visa, multiple teams, hundreds of people in India and Germany and Aruba and Chicago and New York, like all at the same time. We did a thing, we had a team in Russia for the Russian Olympics, the Sochi Olympics. So I'm used to being in a high pressure environment and managing millions of dollars and personnel. So I think that, coupled with those other things I had mentioned, some real estate experience, made people feel comfortable about it. There have been deals that I've invested in with people who don't have parallel experience in industry at all, that have not done well, quite honestly. So I want someone who's got a track record in real estate or some other sort of business where I'm like, okay, they're a business person, they know how to execute and get things done. That's those are some of the important things I look for in a GP.
Awesome. Next question we got from Nellie. She asks, do you get involved in mixed-use multifamily developments?
I would love to get involved in mixed-use multifamily developments. The ground-up development I was talking about in Everett, that's mixed use. Beyond that, I haven't. So one of the things I didn't talk about in this presentation was when I moved to Boston. So we moved to Miami. I think I mentioned that. I don't think I covered moving to Boston, but after 2 years in Miami, my wife got approached with another really cool job opportunity that had us in Boston. And another full cycle thing is that she just got promoted and we just moved back to New York. And now I live in that townhouse that I showed you guys earlier. But anyway, when I first moved to Boston, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know Boston real estate. And I decided to enroll in a course of studies at Boston University. I ended up getting 2 different certificates there, one in real estate finance and one in commercial real estate. And I took all these courses, and it was all like continuing education type thing. They were all professionals who were working in real estate, and was all taught by real estate professionals, like very, very senior positions in these big firms in Boston. And so it was great because they were talking about projects in Boston. So I learned about Boston and the different areas of Boston by learning about the real estate. I networked with a ton of people, and it was wonderful. And that course of studies covered not only multifamily, which I also thought maybe I'd have some gaps in my multifamily knowledge because I had learned from books and podcasts and mentorship groups and things like that. Luckily, I didn't really learn anything at Boston University when it came to multifamily, but I did learn a lot when it came to office and retail and industrial. So there are nuances, there are differences. They're not vast, they're not huge, but there are some differences. And through that course of studies, I learned all of that. So I know how to look at a mixed use property and understand that. And I think it's definitely something that I want to do. One of my favorite properties is called the Ink Block. It's a property in Boston that was redeveloped. It used to be where the Boston Globe, I think it was the Globe. It was either the Globe or the Herald or whatever, but it was where they had the printing presses. And newspapers have kind of gone defunct. That building is no longer was being used for that. And a developer came in and bought it. It was in a bad area of town, not bad, but just like industrial area of town, not a great area of town. And he bought the whole block, and that's why it's called the Ink Block, because of the ink from the printing press. And he developed the entire thing, and he has, there's like a Sweet Greens and a Whole Foods and like all this cool stuff down at the bottom. Now it's changed. That whole neighborhood is now becoming very, very nice. When it was just like a bunch of empty warehouses and stuff. So, I mean, and that guy, what he did was mixed use. I mean, it was really placemaking is what he was doing. I don't know that I'm at that level yet, maybe at some point much, much further on in my career, but mixed use is something that I think could be really interesting, especially with some sort of retail on the first floor and residential up above, where 80-90% of your building is residential, but you have that commercial space below.
Cool.
I've never done one. I've invested passively in them.
Awesome. Sean asked, what is the purpose of being a guarantor?
So the purpose of being a key principal for me and for most people is to gain the experience of like learning what those documents are, but basically getting in they call it like the Fannie Club or the Freddie Club, because once you've already done one of those, that lender looks at you differently. With the 132 unit property that I was trying to get in Lawrence, had I not been a key principal on that deal in Waco, and had I not had the partner that I had, I don't think Fannie would have allowed me to get the loan. I don't think that I had the commensurate experience to qualify for that. But I had a 168 unit property now on my resume that I was a guarantor on. Then all of a sudden you're sort of in the Freddie Club. Plus my partner had done like 10 deals, right? So that combined, there was no problem whatsoever with Fannie. I probably would have been okay based off of his experience without having been that key principal. But when I signed up for it, I didn't really know what was going to happen, who I was going to find, whatever I wanted to invest in the deal. I thought it was a good learning experience. Hindsight, I don't know that I got out of it what I was hoping to get because of the way things came to play. But if I had gone after maybe a 50 unit, was trying to do it on my own without a partner, then that really would have been a great thing that I had that. So I'll just leave it at that.
Awesome. Morali asks, are your syndications a fund to buy multiple deals, or do you deal by deal syndications?
I do deal by deal syndications. The the thing about the funds that's good is if the people who are running the fund are good. So there are funds where they'll work with multiple sponsors. I've also seen sponsors who just do their own fund. If it's a fund where they basically are sourcing deals from multiple sponsors, if they're vetting those sponsors, it could be good because it gives you some diversification in terms of different operators and hopefully in different locations. But then again, like I said, you're investing with the fund. You're not investing with the person who's actually calling the shots on the deal. The other thing is if you're raising funds only for your own deals, I have felt like there would be pressure on me to get a certain amount of deals to be able to place that capital. Now, in speaking with people about it, what you can do is you can set up this fund and people basically like commit to a certain amount of money, but then you don't actually get the money until you do a capital call, and then you get the money and then you buy the property. But I don't know. Personally, as an investor, and remember 2/3 of my portfolio, I'm a limited partner, and I don't know that I want to pledge money. Like I was actually, as an example, I was talking with Dustin Hayden about like, when is their next deal? Because I'm interested in finding out about it, possibly investing with one of their deals. So if they told me, well, Matt, we have a fund, so just, give us 50K or 100K, and we'll hold on to it. And then the next deal we have, you'll be in that. And then, maybe the next 2 deals or 3 deals or whatever, however they've set up their fund. That's okay, but I don't know what I want to commit to give them money and then have that, like I have to hold on to that money in my savings account. Nothing's happening with it. It's not generating anything until the next time Dustin and Hayden get a deal. I mean, hopefully they get one next week, but they might not get one for a year. I have no idea. And then they might feel pressure to like do a deal because they're like, well, we have all these people who want to place capital and they've pledged capital. And so that's the reason so far why I haven't done a fund. It might be something that I look to do in the future, but I'm concerned with sort of the deal flow and how that might work.
Cool. I know you've touched on the KP thing a decent amount. Would you KP again in that? I guess, I'm assuming you would KP under different maybe conditions or maybe a little more control or something like that. But if you want to touch on that.
Well, some people get paid to be a key principal. I mean, that's not uncommon that you would get a piece of equity, some sort of action in the deal for guaranteeing the loan. If that were the case, I might consider it. But I haven't KP'd anybody's deal. I think for me to KP a deal, it's got to be a deal I want to invest in. And when I did it, I didn't get any piece of the action. There's a lot of people who just want that experience who aren't going to charge for it. So a lot of times for a sponsor, it's pretty easy to get key principals if you need them to meet because there's net worth and liquidity requirements that you have to meet to get certain loans, right? So we did a massive deal earlier in the year, huge deal. And so we needed like $80 million in net worth. And me and the partners, we just weren't quite there. So we got a couple of key principals, but we didn't even have to give them anything. They just wanted the experience. And then we met those requirements. So I mean, I might do it in the future, but it would just depend what the circumstances were. But I would need to get some sort of compensation because I don't need, I mean, unless it was like for a really good friend, I don't know if Dustin and Hayden were like, Matt, we really need, I don't know. I'd discuss it with them, but I feel like they could probably get someone who doesn't want a piece of the action pretty easily.
Awesome. Yeah, I believe you kind of touched on all the points on Daryl's question there too. Looks like Tracy's got a question about, she's a little confused about the deal sponsorship. Can you please elaborate? Not entirely sure what you're asking there, but
so yeah, I mean, the thing is, some of these terms are interchangeable. So you might call somebody a syndicator, or you might call them a general partner, or you might call them a sponsor. it's really essentially the same thing, right? So that sponsor is, when I spoke earlier about the general partner and the limited partner, where the limited partners are investors who are investing in the deal, they're putting money into the deal. They usually get somewhere between 70 to 80% of the equity in the deal. And then the other 20 to 30% of equity in the deal is reserved for the sponsors who are doing all the work. And in most cases, the sponsor, I mean, at least I can speak for myself, I invest my own money in the deals. So I'm buying limited partnership shares as well. So there's usually set up into two different classes of shares. And like I said, there are multiple ways to skin a cat, but it's usually done this way. So there's Class A shares, and all the limited partners buy the Class A shares, and they don't have control over the deal. Depending on how the company agreement is written, and the one thing that they sometimes have, and I make sure that I have this in my deals to protect my investors, is they have the right to vote the managers out if the deal's going south or whatever. They have to have a super majority. It can't be like one person saying, I'll vote them out, but they can ultimately vote them out. That's the only control they have over the deal. Then the general partners, who are the ones who are managing the deal, they they have 20 to 30% of the equity in the deal, and they are also usually the asset managers, right? The managers of the property. There's usually a property management company, and so these asset managers are managing the property management company and making the high level business decisions on the property. For me and my deals, that entails weekly meetings that we have with the property management companies. And I use the same, I have this multi-tab spreadsheet that has all these different, what we call KPIs, which are key performance indicators, for all the different metrics on the property. How many showings there were this week, from what sources, how many of those converted, what's our vacancy, what's our trending vacancy, occupancy for the next 60 and 90 days, how are our renewals doing, how many trouble tickets do we have, what is our income, what is our other income, what is our expenses, what does a water bill look like, all of that detail. We get into that and make sure that everything is humming along in an orderly fashion. And most of the deals that I do are value add deals where we're making improvements. So we're checking in on the status of all the work that needs to be done at the property. So that's a once a week call, but it's multiple emails and other ad hoc phone calls throughout the week. So that's sort of what the sponsor / general partner / syndicator / asset manager, that's kind of that active thing, where most of the deals that I'm in, 2/3 of my deals, I'm a limited partner. I vet the sponsor. I make sure it's someone that I know, like, and trust, right? That I feel that I can give them $100K and they're hopefully not gonna lose it for me. And I looked at the business plan and it makes sense. I like the property and I like the location, so I give them my money. And that's it. And then, whatever their reporting cadence is, usually once a month or once a quarter, I get an email from them. They tell me how the deal's doing. Hopefully I'm getting distributions, right? Sometimes that takes 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, but hopefully at some point money starts rolling in. But that's it. I'm a limited partner. It's very hands-off, very passive.
We had one other question, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. And I don't know the answer to this, Matt. Maybe you do. It says, do you use European waterfall or American model? I honestly, I don't know the difference. So if you do, great. If you don't, then we can, Raleigh, you can just kind of email us offline. But
yeah, well, I'll touch on it a little bit. I don't know the terminology of a European waterfall or American model, but just for those who are wondering, there is a waterfall type of model. So the way that those work is the sponsor may say, okay, I'm going to get 20% of the equity in the deal, and 80% is going to go to the investors until we hit an IRR, which is an internal rate of return, right? If our IRR exceeds, 15%, then everything above that, I'm going to get 40% and the investors are going to get 60. And then if we hit an IRR hurdle of 20%, then I'm going to get the sponsor's going to get 80% and the investor gets 20%, right? That's a waterfall type model where there's certain hurdles that get hit and it changes sort of the deal structure. I'm assuming the American model that's being referred to is just a straight up, like the way that we do our deals, we just do a straight split, like it's an 80-20 split or 70-30 split or whatever it is. And that's it for the whole deal, regardless of whether we outperform or underperform. And then sometimes there's a preferred return that can be built in there. There's sometimes called a pref, which means that the sponsorship team is not going to get any of that cash flow until that performance hurdle is met. So let's say there's a 7% preferred return. That means the sponsorship team would not get a penny until the investors have gotten 7% annualized in the distribution. And then anything above that, well, it depends how it's written in the company agreement, but then the sponsorship team would partake in parts of those cash distributions. But I think that's what he's hinting at, but not, I don't know it as the European waterfall, what that might mean.
Yeah, I'm not familiar. Real quick, I'll just answer Morales' questions and we'll go ahead and just kind of wrap it up for the evenings. We're kind of over our time a little bit, but yeah, I think Matt just touched on what a pref is. So a pref is what investors get up, before the GPs start getting a split. Right now, you're seeing a lot of 7 pref, maybe 8 pref. And then, so that means investors get the first 7 or 8%. And then after that, there's a split, could be a lot of times it's 70-30, 80-20, somewhere in that range. And then management fees that, sometimes they'll charge an asset management fee to the asset managers, but the management fee goes to Matt uses third-party management companies. We do too. So, but we'll go ahead and wrap everything up. And but yeah, really appreciate it, Matt. Really appreciate your time, and look forward to your book. You said it's coming out in November.
In November.
Okay.
Yeah,
awesome.
if anyone's interested, you can go to my website, sign up for the newsletter, and you'll find out about when it's coming out.
Awesome. Cool. Well, yeah, appreciate your time, man. Awesome presentation. We've gotten a ton of really great feedback. So yeah, appreciate your time and have